He was a titan, a predator in a $10,000 suit, and she was the woman he paraded as a trophy. Gregory Lowe, a New York billionaire, decided to commit the ultimate act of disrespect, taking his young mistress to the city's most exclusive restaurant, Aura. He smirked as he texted his wife Jasmine a lie about a late board meeting. He thought she was at home, a dull accessory to his glittering life. But Gregory was about to learn a fatal lesson. Never underestimate the woman you've wronged. Because he didn't just bring his mistress to dinner. He brought her to the one place in the world his wife held all the power. The restaurant she owned. Gregory Lowe was a man who didn't just enter a room. He conquered it. His voice, a low baritone, accustomed to billion-dollar commands, was currently softened into a tone of practiced deceit. "It's a marathon, darling," he murmured into his phone, his reflection staring back at him from the floor-to-ceiling windows of his downtown office. Below him, New York glittered like a pile of diamonds he'd already pocketed. "The quarterly reports are a disaster. I'll be with the board until midnight at least. Don't wait up." He clicked the phone off without waiting for a reply, a small, cruel smirk playing on his lips. He straightened the knot of his silk tie. There was no board meeting. The only disaster was the fact that his wife Jasmine was so predictable, so tame. Jasmine Rivers Lowe. To the world, she was the impossibly elegant, quiet black woman on his arm at galas, the one with the soft smile and the art history degree. Gregory saw her as the final piece of his collection. He had the penthouse, the Patek Philippe, on his wrist, the private jet, and the beautiful placid wife. He had new money, low capital built on ruthless tech acquisitions, and she had old class, which he found both useful and increasingly boring. He checked his watch, 7:30 p.m. Kendra would be waiting. He slid his phone into his pocket and picked up his briefcase, then set it back down. He wasn't going to the office. He was going to dinner. He buzzed his assistant. "Helen, I'm out for the night. Cancel my morning, 9 a.m. As he stepped into the private elevator, he sent a different text. "On my way. Wear the red dress." The reply was instantaneous, a flurry of heart emojis from Kendra P. Kendra Pierce was everything Jasmine was not. She was loud, she was demanding, she was barely 24, and she was utterly transparently transactional. She didn't have class. She had a surgically enhanced body and an insatiable appetite for his Amex black card. She was a vulgar little trinket, and Gregory found her thrilling. Tonight, he was taking her to Aura. Aura was the single most difficult reservation to get in New York City. It was a temple of modernist cuisine, whispered about in culinary circles, famed for its 3-month waiting list and its unlisted phone number. Gregory had pulled strings, called a contact, who called a friend, who knew a guy. He'd finally secured a table, a last-minute cancellation. It was a power move, the kind he relished. He couldn't wait to see the look on Kendra's face. He imagined her bright and gaudy against Aura's famously minimalist, expensive backdrop. It was a delightful contrast. Across town, in a brownstone that Gregory had paid for, but never truly seen, Jasmine Rivers Lowe powered down her own laptop. Her office was not a sterile glass box. It was warm, filled with books and antique maps. She had heard the lie in Gregory's voice, the slight oily smoothness that always appeared when he was deceiving her. "Don't wait up here," he'd said. "I won't," she whispered to the empty room. Jasmine was not placid. She was not tame. And she was certainly not stupid. The art history degree was real, but it hung next to her MBA from Wharton and her Grand Diplôme from Le Cordon Bleu. Her old class came with old money, a Rivers family trust that Gregory had never bothered to investigate, dismissing it as pin money. He had no idea. He had no idea that while he was building low capital, she had been building her own empire. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Matteo, her maitre d' at Aura. He's on the list. Low +1. 8:30 p.m. Table 12. As instructed. Jasmine looked at the text. She had founded Aura 3 years ago under her maiden name, Jasmine Rivers. It was the crown jewel of the Rivers Hospitality Group, a company she owned outright. Gregory had never known. He paid no attention to the restaurant scene beyond what was trendy, and he certainly never paid attention to her little hobbies. He assumed she spent her days at spas and charity luncheons. She had seen the reservation for Gregory Lowe pop up 2 days ago. It wasn't a last-minute cancellation he'd snagged. It was a trap she had set. Her team had flagged his name the moment his contact had pathetically tried to pull strings. Jasmine had approved the reservation herself. Table 12, she mused. It was a good table, prominent, visible, in the center of the main dining room where the acoustics carried. She stood and walked to her closet. Gregory loved Kendra's red dress. Jasmine, she thought, would wear green, the color of money and envy. He thinks he's taking his mistress out, she said to her reflection, a woman with intelligent eyes burning with a cold, controlled fire. He has no idea he's bringing her to his execution. She put in her diamond earrings. They were a gift from her father, not her husband. Matteo, she texted back. Proceed as planned, and alert security. I have a feeling Mr. Lowe will be expressive tonight. The lobby of Aura was an exercise in weaponized minimalism. There was no gold, no gaudy chandeliers, just vast, echoing walls of polished grey travertine, a single dramatic spray of white orchids, and a discreet desk sculpted from a single block of black marble. The air smelled faintly of bergamot and old money. Gregory Lowe strode in Kendra Pierce, clamped to his arm. She was as promised in the red dress. It was backless, sleeveless, and clung to her like a desperate second skin. Her Birkin bag, a garish pink, a recent gift from Gregory, was swung conspicuously in her hand. Wow, Greg, she whispered, her voice a little too loud for the space. This place is quiet. Are you sure it's good? There's not even a sign. It's not good, Kendra. It's the best, Gregory said, puffing his chest. He felt the eyes of the other patrons, quietly wealthy, tastefully dressed, flicker over Kendra's dress and then dismissively away. It only made him smirk. He loved disrupting their stale, old-world sensibilities. He marched to the desk where a tall, impossibly sharp man in a dark Tom Ford suit stood, his silver hair immaculate. This was Matteo. Reservation, Gregory barked. Low, 8:30. Matteo did not look up from his ledger immediately. He let the word hang in the silent air for a beat too long. Then slowly, he raised his eyes, his gaze cool and assessing. It lingered on Kendra for a fraction of a second before landing on Gregory. Ah, yes, Mr. Lowe, Matteo said, his voice a smooth European blend that was impossible to place. We have been expecting you. Your table for 2. Of course, Gregory snapped, irritated by the man's calm. The best table, I trust. We have table 12 for you, sir, Matteo said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. This way. He led them into the main dining room. It was stunning. A 30-foot ceiling walls of glass overlooking a private starlit garden and tables spaced so far apart that every party was in its own private bubble. The silence was broken only by the quiet clink of silver and murmured conversation. Kendra was visibly impressed, her eyes wide. "Okay, this is fancy." Matteo led them, and led them. Past the plush booths, past the prime tables by the window, and settled them at table 12. It was, as Jasmine had noted, in the exact center of the room. It wasn't a bad table, but it was conspicuous. It felt less like a seat and more like a stage. "This is it," Gregory demanded, looking around. "I was told I'd have a window." "My apologies, Mr. Lowe," Matteo said, his tone still perfectly infuriatingly polite. "Our window tables are reserved 6 months in advance. We were simply delighted we could accommodate you at all on such short notice." The implication was clear. "You are lucky to be here." Gregory's eye twitched. He hated being told he was lucky. He made his luck. But Kendra was already sliding into the booth, her red dress bright against the muted grey velvet. "It's fine, Greggy," she cooed, sensing his mood. "Everyone can see us here. They probably know who you are." Gregory harumphed and sat down. A moment later, a young waitress named Sarah, her uniform, a chic charcoal grey sheath, appeared to pour their water. "Good evening. My name is Sarah, and I will be 2 glasses of your most expensive champagne." Gregory cut her off, not looking at her. "And the menus." "Right away, sir," Sarah said, her voice neutral. She filled their glasses with still water and vanished. "She seems stuck up," Kendra whispered, pulling out her phone to take a selfie, the flash startlingly bright in the dim room. A few heads turned, annoyance flashing on their faces. "Everyone here is stuck up," Gregory said, enjoying the disruption. "They're all just trust fund babies. We're the real power, baby." Kendra giggled and leaned over the table, pressing her chest forward. "Speaking of, what about your wife? What's, Jasmine doing tonight? Probably just, I don't know, cataloguing her beige shoe collection." Gregory let out a harsh laugh. "Something like that. Probably watching some boring documentary or rearranging the pantry. God, she's become such a housewife." "It's sad," Kendra said, applying a layer of neon pink lip gloss. "That's why you need me, to keep you exciting. She's just so dull." "Dull as dishwater," Gregory agreed, raising his glass of water in a mock toast. "Here's to a boring wife. It makes nights like this so much easier." Neither of them noticed the waitress, Sarah, standing just out of sight, her pen still. Neither of them saw Matteo at the podium, his eyes fixed on them. And neither of them had any idea that every word they said was being captured by a discreet microphone embedded in the table's centerpiece, piping their conversation directly to a private office on the 3rd floor. Upstairs, Jasmine Lowe listened, her face a mask of stone. She heard her husband's laugh, heard the mistress's casual, cruel dismissal. "Dull as dishwater." She closed her eyes for a moment, the old familiar ache of his disrespect hardening into something new, something sharp. "Okay, Matteo," she spoke into her own earpiece. "He's settled. Let's begin phase 2. Slow the service, and send the sommelier, the new one." The first 20 minutes of the meal were an exercise in subtle psychological warfare. The expensive champagne Gregory had demanded took 10 minutes to arrive. When it did, it was brought by a junior server, not the head sommelier. This is the Dom Perignon 2008, Gregory asked, inspecting the bottle with a novice's suspicion. Yes, sir, the server replied, already pouring. Let me taste it first, Gregory snapped, but the server had already filled Kendra's glass. A minor breach of etiquette, but one that made Gregory's skin prickle. Then came the menus. Aura was a tasting menu-only establishment. Mr. Lowe, Sarah said, returning to the table. Our menu this evening is a 12-course exploration of coastal ingredients. Are there any allergies the chef should be? I don't explore food. Gregory interrupted. I want a steak, a tomahawk, and she'll have the lobster. Sarah's smile was polite but firm. I'm afraid we don't offer an à la carte menu, sir. The tasting menu is the only experience Aura provides. That's ridiculous, Kendra chimed in. My Gregory is a billionaire. He can get a steak wherever he wants. Go tell your chef to make him one. I cannot do that, ma'am. Gregory leaned forward, his voice dropping to a menacing purr. Listen to me carefully, Sarah. I am Gregory Lowe. I am on the board of 3 major museums, and I could buy this building with my pocket change. If I want a steak, your chef will go to the nearest butcher, buy a steak, and cook it for me. Do you understand? Sarah's composure didn't crack. I understand your request, sir, but I cannot fulfill it. The owner, Ms. Rivers, is exceptionally strict about the integrity of the menu. Perhaps the Wagyu course will be to your liking. Ms. Rivers? Gregory scoffed. Who the hell is Ms. Rivers? Another stuck-up nobody, I assume. Fine, fine, bring the stupid tasting menu, but it had better be good, and I want another bottle of this champagne now. The meal began. Each course was a microscopic, artistic creation. A single scallop with a yuzu foam, a quail egg nestled in a soil of black truffle. It was food designed to be contemplated. Gregory and Kendra hated it. This is it, Kendra said, poking at a delicate sliver of raw hamachi. It's baby food. It's pretentious garbage, Gregory agreed loudly. He was on his 3rd glass of champagne and feeling bullish. This is what happens when people with no real taste get money. The service, meanwhile, had slowed to a glacial pace. Their water glasses sat empty for 2, then 3 minutes at a time. The gap between the 3rd and 4th course stretched to 25 minutes. Gregory was becoming visibly agitated. He felt ignored. Gregory Lowe, was being ignored. This is a joke, he said, his voice rising. People at other tables were starting to look. Where is that waitress? Sarah, get over here. Sarah appeared instantly. Yes, Mr. Lowe. This is the worst service I have ever received in my life. This dump is a disgrace. The food is tiny, the service is slow, and you have an attitude. I am very sorry you feel that way, sir. Don't be sorry. Be better, he spat. You know what I'm done with this. Just bring us the check. This whole meal is of course complimentary. I'm not paying a single dime for this insult. Kendra, emboldened by his anger, added, Yeah, and this Ms. Rivers person should be thanking us for even coming here and giving her place some class. Sarah's expression finally flickered. A tiny, almost imperceptible tightening of her lips. Sir, I am not authorized to comp a meal, especially not one that has been almost fully served. Then get me someone who is, Gregory roared, slamming his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. The entire restaurant went silent. Get me your manager. No forget her the manager. Get on me the owner. Get in me this Ms. Rivers right now. I want to tell her to her face that her restaurant is a failure and that I'm going to post a review on every platform that will shut her down by Monday. Now go. Sarah looked at him. her gaze suddenly cold. "As you wish, Mr. Lowe." She turned and walked not to the kitchen, but toward the grand staircase at the far end of the room. Gregory sat back, breathing heavily, a triumphant sneer on his face. "That's how you handle these people, Kendra. You show them who's boss. This Rivers woman is probably some terrified little hipster. She'll be down here begging for my forgiveness in 2 minutes." Kendra giggled and took a sip of champagne. "I can't wait to see her face, Greggy. Put her in her place." The restaurant remained deathly quiet. Every diner was watching their table. The air was thick with tension. Upstairs, Jasmine heard the slam. She heard the demand. She looked at her head of security, a large man named Robert, who was standing by her office door. She muted the audio feed and stood smoothing the lapels of her emerald green custom-tailored suit. "He's asking for the owner," she said, her voice calm. Robert nodded. "He is, ma'am." Jasmine walked to her full-length mirror. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek chignon. Her makeup was flawless. She looked, she thought, not like a dull housewife. She looked like a CEO. "Well," she said, clasping her hands, "it would be rude to keep a customer waiting." The silence in the dining room stretched. Gregory was starting to feel the first prickle of doubt. The other diners weren't just glancing. They were staring. They looked less like witnesses and more like an audience. "What's taking so long?" he muttered. And then he heard it. A single sharp click of a heel on the marble staircase. Click, click, click. A figure began to descend. It was a woman. She moved with an unhurried, liquid grace that commanded attention. She was tall, dressed in a striking, deep green suit that seemed to absorb the light in the room. Her diamond earrings flashed. Kendra, who was reapplying her lipstick, looked up and her hand froze. Her mouth fell open. "Greg," she breathed, her voice suddenly small. "Greg, what is that?" Gregory turned. His heart, which had been pounding with rage, seemed to stop cold. The woman descending the stairs, her face a mask of serene, cold authority, was his wife. "Jasmine," he choked out. The name was a question, a denial. What the hell are you doing here? Are you following me? Is this some pathetic jealous?" Jasmine reached the bottom of the stairs. She didn't look at him. She looked at Matteo, who met her at the base. "Matteo," she said, her voice clear and carrying perfectly in the hushed room. "Is there a problem at table 12? Matteo inclined his head. "Mr. Lowe was dissatisfied with his experience, Ms. Rivers. He found the service slow and the food pretentious garbage. He demanded to see the owner. He has also refused to pay." Gregory's mind was reeling, trying to process the name. Ms. Rivers. "Ms. Rivers," he repeated, his voice a bewildered croak. "Jasmine, stop this. Stop this insane game. Who is Ms. Rivers?" Jasmine finally turned her gaze to him. It was not the soft, accommodating gaze of his wife. It was the flat, assessing stare of a shark. "I am," she said. She walked calmly, deliberately to their table. She stood at its head, looking down at her husband and his mistress. "I am Jasmine Rivers, owner, founder, and chief executive of Aura and the Rivers Hospitality Group." Kendra let out a small, strangled gasp. No, that's not. You're just his wife." Jasmine's eyes flicked to Kendra. It was the first time she had acknowledged her. "And you must be the late board meeting," Jasmine said, her voice dripping ice. "Kendra Pierce, your Instagram is very thorough. You really should set it to private when you're sleeping with a married man. It's just sloppy." Kendra's face, caked in makeup, turned a mottled, furious red. Gregory surged to his feet, his chair scraping violently. "Jasmine, enough. I don't know what this is, some sick joke, some hobby you've been hiding, but you're embarrassing me. You're embarrassing us." "Sit down, Gregory," Jasmine said. It wasn't a request. It was a command. To his own shock and the shock of everyone watching, he slowly, mechanically sat. "You're not embarrassed," Jasmine continued, her voice low and dangerous. "You're confused. You're a man who can only see the world in terms of price tags, and you never ever bothered to check mine." You own this," he stammered, gesturing around the opulent room. This, how with my money?" A dry, brittle laugh escaped Jasmine's lips. It was a sound Gregory had never heard before, and it terrified him. "My God, your arrogance is bottomless. Your money, Gregory. You really thought the woman you married was just an accessory you picked up at a charity auction." She leaned in, placing her hands on the table. "You thought I was dull as dishwater, didn't you? You thought I was at home cataloguing my beige shoes. Those were your words, I believe." Gregory's blood ran cold. She had heard him. "While you were busy building low capital," Jasmine said, her voice resonating with power, "I was building this, the Rivers Hospitality Group. It includes 2 hotels in the Caribbean and a culinary institute in upstate New York. It's valued as of last quarter at $900 million. She paused, letting the number land. "It was founded with my inheritance, the Rivers Trust, the pin money you always found so amusing." Gregory was speechless. He was drowning. Jasmine turned to Sarah, who was standing nearby holding a black leather billfold. "Sarah, please give Mr. Lowe the check. Full price. That includes the 2 bottles of Dom Perignon, the 12-course menu for 2, and the... yes. The $8,000 bottle of Chateau Margaux he so loudly ordered from the sommelier, thinking it would impress his date." I didn't order that," Gregory protested weakly. "You demanded the best red wine you have from our sommelier," Jasmine corrected him. "He gave it to you. You drank it. You will pay for it. The total, Mr. Lowe, is $11,450. Kendra, finally finding her voice, let out a hysterical screech. "You can't do this. You're still his wife. He'll divorce you and he'll take half of this dump. We'll take everything." Jasmine's smile was thin and sharp as a razor. "Ah," she said. "The divorce. Yes, let's talk about that. You see, Kendra, you really should have dated a smarter billionaire." "A smarter billionaire," Gregory repeated, his voice hoarse. He felt a ringing in his ears. This was a nightmare. He was in his wife's restaurant, his secret, boring wife. "Yes, Gregory." "Smarter," Jasmine said, her calm voice cutting through his panic. "Do you remember our prenuptial agreement, the one you were so proud of, the one your team of sharks at Adler and Croft drafted?" He nodded, grasping at the first solid object in the churning sea of his confusion. "I remember. It's ironclad. Ironclad. You get nothing of mine, Jasmine. Nothing from Lowe Capital. Nothing." "Exactly," Jasmine said. "It was a separate property agreement. What's yours is yours, and what's mine is mine." Her smile widened. "You were so obsessed with protecting your new money from me, you never even considered that my old money might be worth protecting from you. The Rivers Hospitality Group is 100% mine. It's held in an irrevocable trust that my father established 20 years ago. In a divorce, you wouldn't get to touch a single beautifully designed, minimalist grey brick of it. Gregory stared at her. The woman he'd dismissed as a glorified decorator, a soft-spoken companion, was laying out a financial strategy that was as ruthless as any of his own. "So you see," Jasmine continued, turning her gaze back to the mistress, "he can't take half. He can't take any. But the divorce is just the appetizer." Kendra, who had been listening with growing horror, pushed back from the table. You're a bitch. A crazy, lying bitch." "I'm a lot of things," Jasmine said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I'm a cordon bleu trained chef. I'm a Wharton MBA. I'm the CEO of a $900 million company. But the one thing I'm not is your husband's fool. He is your fool, Kendra." "Greg, do something!" Kendra shrieked, tugging on his sleeve. "Don't let her talk to me like that. Tell her." Gregory looked from Kendra's desperate, painted face to Jasmine's cold, triumphant one. He was a man famous for his boardroom ambushes for his hostile takeovers. And he had just walked blindfolded and arrogant into the most spectacular ambush of his life. "Jasmine, please," he tried, attempting to shift his tone to the one he used for negotiation. "Listen, honey. We can talk about this. At home. This is a mistake." "The only mistake," Jasmine said, "was yours. You mistook my kindness for weakness. You mistook my silence for ignorance. For 10 years, Gregory Fye, have watched you lie. I have watched you cheat. I have smiled at your galas while you texted women like her under the table. I have listened to you belittle my intelligence, my family, and my hobbies. And tonight you brought your filth into my house." Her voice dropped, and for the first time, a tremor of pure white-hot fury entered it. "You demanded to see the owner. Here I am. You demanded to know why the service was slow. It was slow because I told them to. I wanted you to sit here. I wanted you to stew in your own arrogance. I wanted you to get loud. I wanted every single person in this room to see exactly who you are." She gestured around the room. The other diners, captains of industry, old money families, renowned artists, were all watching, their faces a mixture of shock and on some quiet admiration. This is entrapment," Gregory sputtered, his face turning a blotchy purple. You tricked me." "I did no such thing," Jasmine said. "I simply approved your reservation. You did the rest all by yourself. You were rude to my staff. You insulted my food. And you refused to pay your bill." She nodded to Sarah, who stepped forward and placed the leather billfold on the table. "Pay your bill, Gregory." Gregory looked at the bill, then at Jasmine. "And if I don't, what will you do?" "Call the police on your own husband. Think of the scandal, Jasmine. Think of your reputation." Jasmine's cold smile returned. "Oh, Gregory, you poor, stupid man. You still think this is about a restaurant bill. You still think this is about your reputation." She shook her head, a look of almost genuine pity on her face. "This was never about the bill. This was never even about her," she said, flicking a hand at Kendra. "This is about you, and the fact that you just lost everything." Gregory's brow furrowed. "What are you?" I haven't lost anything. Low capital is stronger than ever. I'll pay the damn bill." He reached for his wallet, his hands shaking with rage. "I'll pay it, and then I'm leaving, and my lawyers will see you in the morning." "I don't think they will," said a new voice, A man in a sharp, conservative suit had approached the table unnoticed. He was older, with sharp eyes and a briefcase. He looked like a predator of a different kind, a legal one. "Mr. Lowe," the man said. "My name is Ben Carter. I'm legal counsel for Ms. Rivers and the Rivers Hospitality Group. But I'm also here on behalf of, well, your former colleagues." "My former?" Jasmine stepped back as if to give the man room to work. "Gregory," she said, "you were right about one thing. You were at a board meeting tonight, or at least one was happening about you." The blood drained from Gregory Lowe's face, leaving it a sickly, waxy grey. "A board meeting," he whispered. Mr. Carter set his briefcase on an adjacent empty table and clicked it open. "Yes, Mr. Lowe. An emergency board meeting. It was convened at 8:00 p.m. this evening, while you were complaining about the champagne." "That's not possible," Gregory said, shaking his head. I'm the chairman. I'm the majority shareholder. They can't meet without me." "Oh, they can," Jasmine said, her voice light, "when the meeting is called to investigate credible allegations of massive corporate fraud, embezzlement, and misappropriation of assets, all filed by, well, me." "You." Gregory's voice cracked. "You don't know anything about my business." "Don't I?" Jasmine replied. "You forgot, Gregory. As your dull wife, I was also the default signatory on your household accounts, the accounts you got very sloppy with." Carter pulled out a thick, spiral-bound document. "For the last 6 months, Mr. Lowe, you have been diverting funds from Lowe Capital's corporate accounts to pay for a, shall we say, personal expense. A $4 million condominium at 15 Central Park West, for instance. A lease on a 2025 Maserati. Multiple Birkin bags." He tapped the document. "You've been funneling company money, shareholder money, to Ms. Pierce here. You disguised them as consulting fees and client entertainment. But the SEC has a very specific and very boring definition of client, and Ms. Pierce doesn't fit it." Kendra, who had been watching this like a tennis match, suddenly looked terrified. "Me? What? I didn't do anything." "He gave me those things. They were gifts. They were stolen dear," Jasmine said, not even looking at her. "Jasmine, you wouldn't—" Gregory pleaded, his voice now a desperate rasp. "You wouldn't. This is our life. This is my company. You would destroy me, destroy yourself over a fling." Jasmine's face hardened into granite. "A fling. You call 10 years of humiliation a fling. No, Gregory. This isn't about jealousy. This is about justice. You're a thief. You stole from your company. You stole from your shareholders, and you stole 10 years of my life. I am just balancing the books." Carter cleared his throat. "The board has voted Mr. Lowe unanimously. As of 9:15 p.m., you have been removed as chairman and CEO of Lowe Capital effective immediately. Your assets have been frozen pending a full investigation by the SEC, who received an anonymous tip with a very thorough dossier of evidence this afternoon." My assets." Gregory stumbled back, gripping the table for support. His empire, his life's work, gone in an hour. "The board has also enacted the morality clause in your contract." Carter continued, his voice a monotone dirge. "Which means you are not entitled to a severance package. You are not entitled to your golden parachute. You forfeit all unvested stock options. You, Mr. Lowe, are ruined." Gregory stared, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. The Patek Philippe on his wrist, which he'd always seen as a symbol of his power, suddenly felt like a heavy, useless shackle. He looked at Jasmine. She was watching him, her eyes bright and unforgiving. She had done this. This woman he'd ignored, cheated on, and dismissed. She had dismantled his entire world, piece by piece, right under his nose. And she had used his own arrogance as the weapon. Kendra, seeing the entire picture with devastating clarity, began to panic. The money was gone. The condo, the car, it was all tied to him. I didn't know, she cried, backing away from the table. I didn't know any of this. He told me it was fine. I have to go. She grabbed her pink Birkin bag and made a dash for the exit. Oh, one more thing, Ms. Pierce, Jasmine called after her. Kendra froze her hand on the door. The condo at 15 Central Park West, Jasmine said. It was a corporate lease from Lowe Capital, since Mr. Lowe is no longer with the company. That lease has been terminated. You have 24 hours to vacate the premises. And do leave the Birkin. It's company property. Kendra's face crumpled. She let out a sound of pure, animalistic rage and threw the $50,000 bag at Jasmine. Jasmine didn't flinch. She simply sidestepped it. The bag hit the marble floor with a dull, expensive thud. Robert, Jasmine said calmly. Her head of security, who had been standing by the stairs, moved forward. Please escort Miss Pierce out. She's finished with her meal. Kendra, sobbing and screaming, You'll pay for this. Both of you, was firmly guided out of the restaurant, her red dress a streak of shame disappearing into the night. The dining room was a vacuum. The hysterical fading sobs of Kendra Pierce had left a ringing silence in their wake. The only sounds were the distant polite clink of a fork on a plate from a far corner and the ragged, shallow breathing of Gregory Lowe. He was a statue of a broken man, a monument to his own downfall. His hands, which had signed billion-dollar deals and dismissed 1,000 underlings, were flat on the table as if to stop it from spinning. His $10,000 suit, his armor, looked like a cheap costume. The blotchy purple of his rage had faded to a sickly, waxy gray. He was a man who had been hollowed out, and every diner in the room was a witness to the void. He stared at Jasmine. His mind a broken abacus, frantically trying to make the numbers add up. He saw the woman he had married, but the image was superimposed with this new, terrifying reality. The quiet, art-loving woman he'd left at home was gone. In her place stood this architect, this strategist who had just conducted a public demolition of his entire life. He couldn't reconcile the two. He searched her face for a crack, for a hint of the dull wife. He knew a sign of regret, of fear, of something familiar. He found nothing but a serene, cold clarity. His voice, when it finally came, was unrecognizable, a dry, hoarse whisper. Why? It was the only word he had left. Why? All this? He gestured weakly at the room, the staring diners, the legal documents. The restaurant. The public humiliation. Why not just file for divorce? Why? This. Jasmine, who had been watching him with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a specimen, moved. She bent gracefully and picked up the garish pink Birkin bag from the floor. She inspected its crocodile skin. For scuffs, her expression one of faint distaste, as if handling a piece of trash. She turned and handed it to Matteo, who had materialized at her elbow. "Matteo," she said, her voice crisp and clear. "Please have this sent to Mr. Richardson, the new interim CEO of Low Capital. I believe it belongs in their asset forfeiture department. Have it sanitized first." She turned back to Gregory. Her eyes, which he had once found placid, were now 2 chips of brilliant, unforgiving ice. "Why?" she repeated, as if tasting the word. "You don't get to ask why anymore, Gregory. You're a bully. And bullies are at their core cowards. They don't understand quiet departures. They don't respect lawyers' letters. They only understand one thing: power. Brute force. Public domination." She took a step closer to the table, leaning in. "You had to see me take yours. You had to feel it. You had to sit here in my house, a place I built from nothing but my own skill and my own money, and you had to watch me beat you. Not just in a divorce. I had to beat you at your own game." Her voice dropped thick with the weight of a decade of suppressed fury. "For 10 years you've treated me like a line item in your budget. The wife. Something to be maintained at minimal cost. Remember the gala for the museum? When you told Mr. Henderson, I dabbled in art as if I were a child finger painting, all while I was quietly sitting on the acquisitions board he'd been trying to get on for a decade. You didn't just ignore me, Gregory. You went out of your way to make me small so you could feel big." She stood up straight again, the moment of heat passing replaced by a chilling finality. "You built an empire of paper and lies. It was a house of cards. I built one of stone and integrity, and stone Gregory always wins. I didn't humiliate you. I simply pulled back the curtain and let the world see the fraud you've always been." Gregory's head sank. He had no defense. She was right. He had seen her as nothing, and she had been everything. Jasmine let the silence settle, then gave a sharp, decisive clap of her hands as if closing a ledger. The sound made him jump. "Now," she said, her tone shifting, all passion gone, replaced by the brisk, impersonal voice of a proprietor. "There is still the matter of the bill." Gregory looked up, his eyes wide, with a new, pathetic kind of bewilderment. The bill," he stammered. You just took my entire company. You just told me my assets are frozen. I can't pay this. I have nothing." He was pleading now. Gregory Lowe, was begging. He was looking for mercy, for her to be the old Jasmine, the one who paid the household accounts, the one who smoothed things over. Jasmine's expression remained impassive. "That is indeed a problem. I run a business, Mr. Lowe, and Aura does not accept excuses in place of payment. My staff, who you so crudely insulted, expect to be paid." "Jasmine, for God's sake," he cried, his voice cracking. "Be reasonable." A ghost of a smile, thin and sharp as a shard of glass, touched her lips. "Reasonable?" she asked. "Was it reasonable to lie to me tonight about a late board meeting? Was it reasonable to call my life's work, this very room, a pretentious dump? Was it reasonable to use your shareholders' money to fund your pathetic, tacky little affair? No, Gregory. I don't think I'll be reasonable. The time for reason is long past. But," she added, her eyes narrowing slightly, "I am practical." Her gaze dropped from his face to his left wrist. "That Patek Philippe," she said, her voice clinically precise. "It's a Nautilus, isn't it? Reference 5711 rose gold. Black-brown dial. Market value is, what, $90,000? on a bad day. Gregory's hand flew instinctively to his watch, a reflexive, protective gesture. "No," he whispered. "Not this. This was my father's." It was his last pathetic lie. And Jasmine, he realized with dawning horror, knew it. Her laugh was not a laugh. It was a cold, dry puff of air. Your father's was stainless steel. A 1978 Calatrava, with a simple white face and a black leather strap. It was a beautiful, modest, elegant watch. For a beautiful, modest, elegant man. You sold it 3 years ago to fund a stock margin call you'd hidden from me. She pointed a finger at his wrist. This you bought yourself when you closed the hostile takeover of Apex Industries. You came home drunk on champagne and arrogance, and you told me it was your shark watch, a trophy, a symbol of your real self. She leaned in her voice, a predatory whisper. Well, the shark has been de-finned, and the trophy is forfeit. She signaled to Robert, her security guard, who had been standing silent as a statue by the staircase. Mr. Lowe will be settling his $11,450.80 bill in trade, she said clearly. Robert, please accept his watch as collateral. I'm sure we can arrange to have it appraised and auctioned by morning. We'll send him the difference, assuming he has a forwarding address. No! Gregory roared. It was a raw, primal sound of pure desperation. This was the last piece of him. He lunged, not at Jasmine, but across the table, trying to protect the watch, to protect the last vestige of the man he was. You vulture! He never had a chance. Robert intercepted him easily, not with a punch, but with a simple neutralizing grip on his forearm. The strength was immense, the movement bored and efficient. It was the way one would handle a drunk or a hysterical child. Sir, Robert said, his voice a low, calm rumble. Don't make this more difficult. Please, remove the watch. Gregory struggled for a moment, his face purple, his suit jacket bunching at his shoulders. But it was useless. He was pinned by the man's grip, by the weight of 100 staring eyes, by the unmovable force of his wife's will. Defeat, total and absolute, flooded his system. The fight drained out of him, leaving a hollow, shaking shell. He slumped. With his free hand, his fingers trembling violently, he fumbled with the clasp. It took him 2 tries. The watch, $90,000 of rose gold and arrogance, came free. It felt impossibly heavy. He let it fall from his fingers onto the table, where it landed with a dull, final, expensive clack. Robert released his arm. With a practiced motion, he picked up the Patek, wrapped it in a clean linen napkin from the table, and pocketed it without a glance. "Thank you for your patronage, Mr. Lowe," Jasmine said. Her voice was formal, as if addressing any other customer. "Your business here is concluded. Mr. Carter will be in touch with your lawyer, assuming you can still afford one, regarding the divorce proceedings. And the SEC, I'm sure, will be in touch about everything else." She straightened her jacket. "Get out of my restaurant." Gregory Lowe stood up. His legs felt like cement. He was no longer a titan. He was just a man in a rumpled suit with a pale, naked wrist. He looked around the room. He saw the faces of people he'd played golf with, people he'd intimidated in boardrooms, people he'd dismissed as old money relics. They were all staring at him, their expressions a chilling mixture of cold pity, detached curiosity, and undisguised contempt. He had to walk. Every step from the center of the room to the travertine lobby was an eternity. The silence was his exit music. He could feel every single pair of eyes on his back. He didn't look at Jasmine again. He couldn't. He pushed through the heavy front doors, which closed behind him with a quiet, final, definitive thud. The dining room remained perfectly still for a beat, the tension still vibrating in the air. And then from a corner table, an elderly woman, draped in pearls and quiet generational wealth, began to clap. It wasn't a loud, raucous sound. It was a slow, measured, deliberate applause. A man at another table, a well-known tech investor, saw it and joined in. Then another diner, and another. Within seconds, the entire dining room. This collection of New York's most powerful and discerning had risen to their feet. They were not cheering a spectacle. They were in their own restrained, powerful way, anointing a new queen. Jasmine Rivers stood alone in the center of the room, the epicenter of the storm she had unleashed and controlled. She looked around, her composure perfect, and gave a single, gracious nod. A small, genuine smile finally touched her lips. It was a smile of release. She turned, ignoring the billfold, the leftover champagne, and the wreckage of her husband's life. She walked not with the frantic energy of a victor, but with the calm purpose of a woman with work to do. She ascended the grand staircase. She didn't go to her office. She went to the private 3-bedroom apartment she kept on the top floor, an apartment Gregory never knew existed. She bypassed the living room and walked straight out onto the massive terrace. The cool, late October night air hit her face sharp and clean. Below her, New York glittered a vast, indifferent ocean of light. She heard her phone, which she'd left on an outdoor table, begin to buzz. It was Carter, likely with an update. It would be followed by the new CEO. It would be followed by her PR team, who were already spinning the narrative. It was the sound of her new life, a complex, powerful machine she had built and set in motion. She ignored it. She stood at the glass railing, looking down at the city that was now finally truly hers. She reached up and one by one began to pull the pins from her sleek, tight chignon. The heavy dark hair tumbled down, falling over the shoulders of her emerald green suit. She took a deep breath, inhaling the cold air of her freedom. She was not Mrs. Gregory Lowe. She was not a housewife. She was not an accessory, a hobbyist, or dull as dishwater. She was Jasmine Rivers, and she was just getting started. Karma isn't just a concept. It's a bill that always comes due. Gregory Lowe learned that the hard way. He thought his wife was an asset to be managed, but she was the CEO he never saw coming. He walked into her world dripping with arrogance and walked out with nothing but the suit on his back. This story is a powerful reminder. Never ever underestimate the people you think you've figured out. The quietest person in the room is often the most powerful. What did you think of Jasmine's ultimate revenge? Was it too harsh, or was it a perfectly served dish of cold, hard justice? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. If you love stories where karma delivers the final devastating blow, make sure you like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to our channel for more real-life drama every week. Don't miss what's coming next.
Poor wife walks in on millionaire proposing to mistress. What she does next will shock you. When Maria Delgado pushed open the ornate doors to the private dining room, she was expecting a quiet evening with her millionaire husband, Jacob. Instead, she found him kneeling before another woman, an extravagant ring poised between his trembling fingers. In that split second, her world shattered like delicate porcelain dropped from a great height. Emotions warred inside her: shock, betrayal, fury. But what Maria did next defied every expectation. The consequences of that decisive moment would reverberate through high society circles, revealing secret alliances, shattered trust, and a woman's quest to carve her own destiny out of the chaos her husband had unleashed. Maria Delgado had been raised to believe in the power of love. Born in a modest suburb of Philadelphia, she'd spent her childhood studying hard, watching her parents work long hours, and learning the value of perseverance. Love, in her eyes, was meant to be honorable, a sacred promise that transcended time and adversity. So, when she married Jacob Delgado, an unassuming man at the time, who later skyrocketed to wealth, she believed their union was fated. Everything about Jacob back then spoke of ambition tempered by warmth, a thirst for success supported by a deep devotion to her. They married in their mid-20s, beginning with a modest apartment in downtown Philadelphia. While he climbed the rungs of the real estate development world, Maria supported them both by teaching music lessons to neighborhood kids. She beamed with pride each time Jacob closed a deal that brought them a step closer to his dream, building an empire. Through the nascent years of their marriage, every victory was shared. Every setback was consoled by the other. The couple felt invincible. As Jacob's fortunes grew, so did his interests, and the city seemed too small for his evolving ambitions. With the promise of even greater success, he uprooted them to New York. Over time, he transformed from the modest man Maria once knew into someone revered by the upper echelons of Manhattan's elite. He became known for orchestrating multi-million-dollar real estate ventures. Their modest apartment turned into a lavish penthouse overlooking Central Park. From dressing in simple button-down shirts to adorning himself in bespoke suits from Savile Row, Jacob thrived in the glitz and glamour of high society life. Maria was proud of him, of course. But with each acquisition, each expansion, each lavish party thrown by Manhattan's wealthy set, she began to sense something intangible slipping away. The sweet, humble spark in Jacob's eyes was being replaced by a relentless desire for more. Their shared dinners became fewer and fewer. Their conversations, once intimately about dreams and daily life, revolved around boardroom strategies and the constant hum of new deals. Where there was once closeness, an unspoken chasm was opening. Still, Maria was no stranger to sacrifice. She believed that a marriage demanded effort and understanding. She accepted that his time was consumed by meetings, power lunches with foreign investors, and charity galas where he networked. She made space for his blossoming empire and refused to let suspicion take root. If he was distant, she told herself, it was because he was tired. If his phone rang at odd hours, it was because that was how the real estate world worked. She clung to the memory of that earnest young man who held her hand in their first tiny kitchen, dreaming of a brighter future together. But all illusions can shatter. Late one evening, after one of his countless events, Jacob casually mentioned that he wanted to take her to an exclusive restaurant the next night. Belafonte's, perched high above the city with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the sparkling skyline. Maria's heart fluttered. A private dinner just for them, exactly what they needed to revive their bond. She felt a spark of hope that maybe their relationship could rekindle, that the old Jacob would re-emerge, if only for a night. The following day, she dressed with care in a flowing, emerald green gown. She recalled how green was Jacob's favorite color on her, how he'd often say her eyes looked like precious jewels when she wore it. She left their penthouse with trembling excitement, not wanting to arrive too early, but also conscious that the invitation had felt momentous, like something significant was in store. When she reached the restaurant, an attentive maitre d' greeted her by name and led her down a corridor to a discreet, gold-trimmed door. Soft piano music flowed from within. Her heart pounded, imagining a candlelit room just for the two of them. Instead, as the door swung open, she stumbled upon a scene she could never have prepared for. Jacob, down on one knee, proposing to a statuesque blonde woman, his mistress, whose face Maria recognized from hushed rumors at parties and unconfirmed gossip in tabloids. The ring in Jacob's hand sparkled like a fallen star, captured by the overhead chandelier's light. Time froze, capturing her shock, the mistress's gasp, and Jacob's horrified expression in an excruciating tableau. Maria felt dizzy, her sense of reality splintering. Memories of their simple days in Philadelphia flooded her mind. Her hands shook as she clutched the handle of the door for support. She sensed the maître d' quickly slip away, likely to avoid the pending explosion. The look on Jacob's face rapidly morphed from romantic fervor to utter panic. How long has this been going on? Maria finally managed to choke out, voice trembling. The blonde woman, Annalise Winslow, as Maria would later learn, stepped back, her hand protectively covering the ring that Jacob had tried to slip on her finger. She had a deer-in-headlights look, as if she had expected this moment, but not in such a brutal collision of truths. "Maria," Jacob began, rising slowly from his knee, "it's not what it looks like." A pit of molten anger rose in Maria's chest. The anguish burned, pried open by betrayal. She glanced at the ring Jacob was holding. It wasn't a tiny diamond. It was a massive rock, overshadowing the modest ring she herself had worn with pride for years. Everything about this was a sickening confirmation of what she had refused to suspect. She refused to let him see her crumble, her eyes brimming with unshed tears locked onto Jacob's. "For once in your life," she said, voice trembling yet steel-edged, "tell me the truth." Jacob glanced between Maria and Annalise. Shame flickered across his expression, but only for a moment before resolve set in. In a voice that cracked, he said, "I was going to explain it after this. I never wanted you to find out this way." He was trying to speak gently, but Maria found it galling. Here, in a lavish, private dining room that cost more per meal than some people earned in a month, her husband was kneeling before another woman with an engagement ring. Her world felt false, illusions shattered like shards of broken glass. But instead of running, instead of screaming or hurling every insult she could muster, Maria inhaled. She decided then and there that she wouldn't collapse. Not now, not ever. With a composure that surprised even herself, she said, "Fine." She tugged off her wedding band, the simple gold band that had once symbolized their hopeful union. She placed it gently on the nearest table, right next to a silver platter meant for some extravagant dinner. She looked at Annalise, whose cheeks had gone pale. "Congratulations," Maria said icily. "You've caught a big fish. I hope you both choke on it." She turned on her heel, ignoring Jacob's pleas for her to wait. She walked out with her head held high, tears threatening to fall but refusing to let them out until she was out of that stifling, perfumed environment. Little did either of them know, Maria's next actions would set off a chain reaction of hidden truths, corporate betrayals, and unexpected alliances that would ultimately turn the power dynamics of their world on its head. Maria spent the night at a friend's townhouse near Gramercy Park. This friend, Jennifer Robertson, was one of the few people Maria trusted implicitly. Jennifer, a lawyer by profession, had seen far too many wealthy husbands try to con their wives out of rightful settlements. In the warmly lit living room, Maria recounted the horrifying scene. Jennifer listened quietly, her arms folded, eyes flashing indignation at Jacob's betrayal. When Maria finally finished, the tears she had held back since the restaurant began to slide down her cheeks. Jennifer promptly pulled her into a hug. "Maria," she murmured, "this is terrible, but you're not going through it alone. This time, you have to look out for yourself." Maria sniffled, still reeling. "I never thought. All those business trips, all those late nights." Jennifer tightened her grip. "People like Jacob, they think they can have everything. The wife, the mistress, the image of perfection. You don't deserve that." Maria wiped her tears. A cold anger took root in her heart, overshadowing her sorrow. She had sacrificed too much, believed in Jacob too long. Perhaps she'd been naive, but there was no time left for self-pity. "What do I do?" she asked, gazing at Jennifer. "I'm not going to just let him throw me away." Jennifer pursed her lips, then reached for her phone. "First, we need to call Patrick Hodges, one of the top divorce attorneys in New York. He'll know exactly what to do. The Delgado empire might have been built by Jacob, but you've stood beside him every step of the way. New York law won't ignore that." For hours into the night, they planned. Jennifer explained the complexities of high-asset divorces, the myriad ways spouses try to hide money. They dissected the financial empire Jacob had built, the real estate ventures, the offshore accounts rumored by some to exist, the charity foundations that he might use as tax shelters. Maria listened, took notes, and found her heartbreak morphing into a dogged determination. If Jacob thought he could so brazenly propose to another woman, he was in for a rude awakening. The next morning, Maria woke from a fitful sleep. She rose, showered, and dressed in a simple black outfit. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, her eyes rimmed with sadness, yet also lit by an undercurrent of resolve. She thought about that shocking moment in the restaurant. It had been mere hours since her life was turned inside out, yet it felt like an eternity. An unexpected wave of curiosity washed over her. What kind of woman was Annalise Winslow, beyond the honey-blonde hair and designer gown? How long had Annalise waited in the wings for Jacob to propose? Maria's mind churned with possibilities. Was she manipulated by Jacob's power, or was she the manipulator? Determined to cut through the speculation, Maria decided she wanted facts. She dialed a private investigator's number, someone recommended by Jennifer. A man named Richard Pine, known in certain circles for his thorough, discreet approach. Maria remembered meeting him briefly at a philanthropic event. He'd been introduced to her as the best man to find what's hidden. If there was dirt to be dug up, Richard Pine could unearth it. Within an hour, Maria was sitting in a small, upscale coffee shop near Union Square. Face to face with Richard, he was a sturdy man in his mid-50s, with kind but calculating eyes. "What can I do for you, Mrs. Delgado?" he asked in a measured tone, sipping his espresso. Maria inhaled slowly. "I found my husband proposing to another woman last night," she said, voice unwavering. "I need to know everything about her, her background, her motivations, any skeletons in her closet." Richard set down his cup, making the slightest grimace. "I'm sorry to hear that. Cheating spouses are, unfortunately, too common in my line of work. But let's talk specifics. What do you already know about this woman?" "Her name is Annalise Winslow. I believe she's from Los Angeles originally. She's in her mid-20s, definitely younger than me or Jacob. Rumor has it she used to be a model, or maybe a socialite. I'm not entirely sure." Richard nodded, scribbling notes. "Understood. I'll compile everything I can find. Miss Winslow's finances, connections, travel history, job history, whatever might help. And I assume you also want me to keep an eye on Jacob's dealings?" He lifted an eyebrow knowingly. "Yes," Maria replied firmly. "I have a strong feeling there's more to this than just an affair. I want to know if he's been hiding money or if he's planning to move assets out of the country. Anything that can help me get some measure of justice when we go to court, or even before that." Richard nodded again. "I'll be in touch soon." Maria thanked him and left, feeling that with each step she was moving deeper into a labyrinth where she had to be the one calling the shots. She wasn't merely a scorned wife. She was becoming an orchestrator of her own destiny. By afternoon, Maria knew she could no longer avoid returning to the penthouse. She needed her clothes, her documents, her life. She braced herself for the confrontation that was inevitable. Summoning what courage she had, she took a taxi to the towering building that had once felt like a dream come true. Its gleaming marble lobby now felt foreign. She ascended in the private elevator, her heart pounding, stomach in knots. As she slid the keycard and the doors to the penthouse opened, she heard Jacob's voice carrying down the corridor. To her surprise, he wasn't alone. She recognized the female voice, Annalise. They seemed to be arguing. Maria took a moment to listen. Through the grand foyer, she could make out the two silhouettes in the living area. She heard Annalise's voice, tight with anger. "You said you'd handle this differently. Now everyone's talking about it like some scandal. How do you think this makes me look?" Jacob hissed back. "You think I planned for Maria to walk in? God, Annalise, I'm juggling a million things. The board at Delgado Holdings is going to be furious if this leaks to the press. This was supposed to be discreet." Maria felt a twinge of savage satisfaction hearing the cracks form in their alliance. With her shoulders set, she stepped forward, letting her heels clack on the polished floor. Jacob and Annalise whirled around, identical expressions of shock distorting their features. "Maria," Jacob started, lifting a hand in an entreaty, but Maria's gaze was locked onto Annalise. Up close, the mistress was undeniably striking tall, poised with carefully styled waves of golden hair. Yet Maria noticed a flicker of insecurity behind that controlled exterior. "Good," she thought. "I'm not the only one rattled. I just came to get my things," Maria said plainly. "Then I'll leave, and you two can celebrate your engagement in peace." Annalise's shoulders relaxed, but her eyes narrowed in faint challenge. Jacob stepped forward. "Maria, wait. I think we should talk." She laughed mirthlessly. "Talk? That's what you wanted to do? You were going to propose to her, Jacob. Don't pretend there's any middle ground here. And honestly, what do I have to say to you? Congratulations." Jacob's jaw tightened. "It's not that simple." "Actually, it is," Maria snapped, her emotions flaring. "You made a choice, a public choice no less. I can't undo that, and I won't be your doormat." Annalise crossed her arms, lips pressed together, as though restraining herself from retorting. Maria caught the fleeting glance she gave Jacob, some mixture of fear and entitlement. It dawned on Maria that Annalise may have feared losing the security Jacob's fortune promised. The scorned wife's presence in the penthouse complicated matters for the mistress, who presumably dreamed of living here in style. "Just take whatever you need," Jacob said after a moment. "We don't need to fight in front of her." Maria's chest constricted, memories of 1,000 shared moments in this home swirling in her mind. But she suppressed the pain and moved calmly to the master bedroom, which was filled with expensive furnishings and the faint scent of the cologne Jacob once gifted her. She methodically packed a suitcase with her clothes and personal items. Her fingertips lingered on a framed photo of them in front of their first store-bought Christmas tree back in their humble Philadelphia apartment. She set it aside, not wanting to carry something so laden with nostalgia. As she re-entered the living area, she caught a glimpse of Annalise's engagement ring glinting in the afternoon light. Rage flared again, but she forced composure, reminding herself that she had a plan. Once she had everything she needed, she paused at the door, turning back to them. "Jacob," she said, "I've asked Patrick Hodges to represent me. If you want to avoid a scorched earth divorce, I suggest you speak to your attorney." Annalise's eyes flared at the mention of divorce. Possibly it hammered home the reality that Maria wasn't just going to vanish quietly. Jacob's face fell. He tried to speak, but words failed him. In that charged silence, Maria left. She felt hollow, but also strangely empowered. The woman who had walked in on her husband's betrayal mere hours ago was no longer the same, and what awaited her next was a labyrinth of hidden truths. Over the next week, Manhattan buzzed with rumors. The Delgado name had become a fixture of high society galas and philanthropic events. Whispers circulated through penthouse brunches, exclusive clubs, and midnight parties. Jacob Delgado had not only cheated on Maria, but had proposed to his mistress. The gossip columns ate it up. Real estate mogul's secret engagement was the headline in at least one online publication. People debated whether Maria was blindsided or complicit, whether she'd stay or go, and what the mistress was like. In the meantime, Patrick Hodges, the formidable divorce attorney, laid out a roadmap for Maria. They met in his sleek midtown office, with Jennifer present as moral support. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the hustle and bustle of Manhattan below, as though showing a world that never slept, never paused for heartbreak. "Maria," Patrick said in a calm, almost fatherly tone, "Jacob's net worth is estimated at around $700 million. We need to act fast to ensure he doesn't move assets out of reach." $700 million, Maria echoed, stunned, though she knew the figure hovered in that range. She had watched his success balloon over the years, but to hear it stated so plainly shook her. She'd never placed a dollar value on their relationship. Patrick continued, "We'll file motions to freeze a significant portion of his assets until the court rules on equitable distribution. But be ready, his legal team will fight. Also, the prenuptial agreement. We need to see if that holds up in court." Maria's brow furrowed. "We had a prenup, but it was signed before his empire expanded like this. Back then, he had almost nothing. I never thought it would come to this." Patrick flipped through documents. "Yes, it's from 15 years ago, but we have grounds to challenge it if certain conditions have changed significantly, or if you can prove undue influence or anything along those lines. After all, you supported him morally and even financially in the early years." Jennifer chimed in, "Don't forget about the potential hidden offshore accounts. Rumors are swirling that he might be moving investments to the Cayman Islands." Maria felt her insides twist. Every layer of betrayal deepened her resolve. "Let's do whatever it takes. I don't want to be cruel. I just want what's fair. But if Jacob tries to shortchange me after all I've done to help him, then I'm ready to fight." Patrick gave a firm nod. "I'll coordinate with your investigator, Richard Pine. We'll uncover any hidden income streams or suspicious accounts. In the meantime, you need to remain calm. These next few weeks will be a roller coaster." Maria exhaled. She glanced at Jennifer, who squeezed her hand. This was war, and she was prepared. Late one night, Maria's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. She tapped it open and saw, "I have information about Annalise. Meet me at Calderwood Cafe, 9 am tomorrow. R.P. Richard Pine." She felt a rush of anticipation. The next morning she arrived at the cozy Calderwood Cafe, known for its artisanal pastries and discreet atmosphere. Richard sat at a corner table, leafing through a manila folder. Maria slid into the chair opposite him. "So, what have you found?" Richard leaned forward, voice low. "Quite a bit, actually. Annalise Winslow is from Los Angeles. That much is true. She started off as a pageant contestant in her teens, then moved into small-time modeling gigs, mostly promotional events. After that, she tried to break into Hollywood. She had a few minor roles, nothing significant." Maria listened intently as Richard continued. "She married briefly at 19 to a man named Parker Bloom, an older talent manager. The marriage lasted less than a year, and she walked away with a sizable alimony settlement, allegations of emotional abuse from both sides, but nothing proven. After that, she moved to New York around 3 years ago. She's been living in high-end apartments, though it's unclear how she's been affording them." "So she's a gold digger," Maria muttered, disgust curling in her stomach. Richard shrugged. "She's adept at finding wealthy men, that much is clear. And from phone records I accessed, it seems she was seeing Jacob for at least a year before you caught them. Maria's chest clenched. A year. She felt her hands tremble momentarily. For a year, her husband had been living a double life. Go on, she prompted, forcing composure. Her finances are shaky. She maintains appearances, but she's leveraged with credit card debt, living off gifts from older boyfriends. I also found something else, some suspicion that she was previously connected to a money laundering scheme. Though nothing concrete enough for an arrest, she's cunning. She knows how to navigate the wealthy circles and keep her secrets hidden. Maria's mind spun. She pictured Annalise draped on Jacob's arm, whispering sweet words to him while systematically securing her future with his money. This was no mere fling. This was a calculated move by an opportunist. It didn't absolve Jacob, he was equally to blame, a grown man who should have seen the red flags. But it changed how Maria viewed the dynamic. How can I use this information, she asked. Richard folded his hands. Your legal team can introduce this as evidence that Annalise might be pushing Jacob to move assets, or that she might have a questionable background that affects the case. While it doesn't directly influence your divorce settlement, it can shed light on Jacob's credibility and motives. Maria nodded slowly. Thank you, Richard. This is incredibly helpful. She closed the folder, feeling her spirits lift for a moment. This was more than just heartbreak. Now it was a mission to protect herself from two cunning players. She had let love blind her to Jacob's changes, but she would not let it blind her to her own future. While the divorce proceedings were set in motion, Jacob Delgado faced a crisis of his own. The Delgado Holdings Board of Directors had caught wind of the scandal. The reason? A major investor, KG Nakamura, who had planned to pour hundreds of millions into Delgado Holdings' new project, was now hesitant. The fiasco with Jacob's personal life signaled instability at the helm, and big money despises instability. A week later, in the elegant conference room at Delgado Holdings headquarters, Jacob was grilled by the board. The walls were lined with modern art, and the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city. But the tension inside was palpable. Men and women in suits, representing some of the largest financial institutions, demanded answers. Board member Regina Charles, a tough-as-nails executive with silver-streaked hair, eyed Jacob coldly. "We're not here to judge your personal decisions," she began, "but your behavior is affecting our business." Mr. Nakamura is spooked. He stalled negotiations because he doesn't like the negative press associated with your, shall we say, public affair. Jacob attempted a confident posture. "We can handle this," he said. "Nakamura's concerns are about the stability of the company. I can assure you Delgado Holdings is stronger than ever." Regina's sharp gaze didn't waver. "Your wife, Maria Delgado, has been a visible figure at charitable events linked to this company. She was involved, albeit unofficially, in several philanthropic partnerships. Her departure in such a scandalous way raises questions. We need to ensure no crisis of confidence escalates." Jacob felt his insides tighten. The narrative was twisting. Maria was no longer just his wife. She was an extension of the brand he had built. He stifled the desire to lash out at the board's insinuation that his personal life was fair game. "Instead," he insisted, "I'm working on controlling the narrative. We'll handle the press. And as for Maria, once the divorce is settled, we can present a unified, amicable front." Regina's lips formed a thin line. "Jacob, we hired a PR team. They've strongly advised that we do damage control before the next shareholders' meeting. That might involve statements from both you and Maria, something to quell rumors of a messy divorce that could sabotage investor confidence. Besides, have you considered the ramifications if Miss Delgado takes you to the cleaners financially?" Jacob's frustration peaked. "I have attorneys for that," he snapped. "We'll handle it." The rest of the board members exchanged looks. One of them, Arnold Powell, tried to lighten the tone. Look, we just need reassurance that Delgado Holdings won't implode from a personal scandal. If you can't get it under control, we might have to explore leadership changes. That was the ultimate threat, a coup at his own company. Jacob forced a smile that didn't touch his eyes. There will be no need for that. Trust me. As the meeting adjourned, Jacob was left alone for a moment. His reflection in the glossy surface of the boardroom table looked older, more stressed. He thought of Maria's eyes the last time he saw her, brimming with betrayal. Then he thought of Annalise, upset with the negative attention. For the first time, he questioned if the precarious web he'd spun was worth the cost. But it was too late. The avalanche had already begun. In a twist that neither Maria nor Jacob could have predicted, help came from an unexpected quarter, Jacob's estranged sister, Daniela Delgado. She had parted ways with the family years earlier, after disagreeing with Jacob on a major business decision that led to a bitter falling out. Since then, Daniela had built her own path, creating a successful interior design firm. She'd always admired Maria's kindness from afar and held contempt for Jacob's ruthless ambition. Out of the blue, Daniela reached out to Maria. She called one evening while Maria was reviewing documents with Jennifer. "Maria, this is Daniela, Jacob's sister." Maria's initial shock shifted into curiosity. "Yes, Daniela. The first remember you. We haven't spoken in ages." "Look," Daniela said, "I heard about what happened. I don't blame you if you don't want to talk. But I have information about a couple of major real estate deals. Jacob's been working on things that might be relevant to your divorce. If you're interested, meet me at the Silverwood Lounge tomorrow night at 8. Maria hesitated. Jacob had mentioned Daniela only rarely, and it was always laced with bitterness. Yet something told her Daniela might be sincere. "I'll be there," she said, surprising even herself. The next night, Maria walked into the Silverwood Lounge, a chic bar with velvet drapes and soft jazz music. Daniela, a petite woman with sharp features, waved from a corner booth. She wore a stylish black suit and maintained a guarded expression. "Thank you for meeting me," Daniela said, offering a polite nod as Maria sat down. Maria studied Jacob's sister. "I'm surprised you reached out. Jacob never said good things about you." Daniela smirked. "Likewise. He painted you as the obedient wife who turned a blind eye to his shadier deals. But I knew that wasn't you. We might not have been close, but I always saw your kindness." Now, about his real estate dealings. She opened her handbag and pulled out a USB drive. These are documents that point to a series of shell companies linked to Delgado Holdings. I suspect he's been funneling money offshore. Years back, he tried to get me to help launder funds through interior design contracts. I refused, and that's partly why we fell out. He threatened me to keep quiet. Maria's eyes widened. She carefully took the USB drive. If these documents were legitimate, they could be a game changer. "Why help me now?" Daniela's eyes flickered with something akin to regret. "Because Jacob's arrogance has gone too far. He's forgotten family loyalty and moral boundaries. If he wants to destroy you, the one decent aspect of his life, I won't stand for it. And, to be transparent, I want him to face consequences for all the times he's bullied and blackmailed anyone who stood in his way." Maria tucked the USB drive into her purse. She studied Daniela carefully, trying to gauge sincerity. "Thank you," she said eventually. "I'll have my lawyer look at this. I appreciate your honesty." Daniela gave a single nod. "Just be careful. He'll retaliate if he feels cornered. Jacob Delgado is still my brother, and I know what he's capable of." Fear nudged at Maria's heart, but it was overshadowed by her determination. She swore to herself that she wouldn't let fear rule her anymore. Jacob had shattered her trust and flaunted his betrayal in a way that threatened her entire future. She wouldn't stand idly by. While Maria gathered information, Annalise Winslow was not idle. She realized Jacob was in a precarious position. The negative press, the board's dissatisfaction, and now the looming divorce threatened to erode the luxurious future she had counted on. In whispered phone calls, she pressed Jacob to finalize their engagement, to secure her name in the Delgado fortune before it slipped away. Yet Jacob delayed, promising to fix everything first. Uncertain of Jacob's ability to protect her interests, Annalise took matters into her own hands. She arranged a private lunch with one of Jacob's longtime associates, a banker named Charles Montclair. He was known to handle offshore transactions for Delgado Holdings. At a chic bistro on the Upper East Side, she met Charles in a secluded corner. "Jacob trusts you, right?" she asked, swirling her wineglass. She wore a designer dress, exuding confidence, even though her heart pounded with nerves. Charles nodded slowly. "We've done business together for years." Annalise leaned forward, letting her voice drop to a conspiratorial whisper. "Good, because I want to guarantee that if things go south, I'm protected." Charles raised an eyebrow. "That's a tall order." Jacob keeps his financial dealings close to the vest. A sly smile tugged at Annalise's lips. "I'm sure he does. But I also know Delgado Holdings is possibly moving money in ways that aren't entirely above board. If you help me get a piece of the pie quietly, I'll make it worth your while. I have connections in L.A. that might interest you." Charles swallowed. He was no stranger to morally dubious requests, but this was bolder than most. Still, money talked. "What do you propose?" "I propose you set me up with an offshore account. A small percentage of whatever Jacob moves. I don't care if it's 1 million or 10 million, as long as I have something to fall back on. In return, I'll keep my mouth shut if the authorities come knocking." Charles looked uneasy. He glanced around to ensure no one was listening. This could be risky. "But I'll see what I can do." Annalise nodded, leaning back with a smug satisfaction. She felt a thrill at the prospect of securing her own fortune. She was tired of waiting for Jacob to deliver. If he was going to let his empire crumble, she'd salvage what she could. The divorce proceedings accelerated. Under the scrutiny of Patrick Hodges, Jacob's lawyers tried every trick in the book. They argued that the prenuptial agreement limited Maria's entitlement to a fraction of the current fortune. But Patrick introduced evidence that Maria's early support had directly facilitated Jacob's meteoric rise. Financial experts testified about intangible contributions, spousal support, and the validity of a prenup signed under potentially misleading circumstances. Behind closed doors, settlement negotiations were intense. One afternoon, in a wood-paneled conference room in the courthouse, Maria and Jacob faced each other while their lawyers sparred over details. The tension was suffocating. Jacob's lead attorney, Garrett Rhodes, glared over his wire-rimmed glasses. "My client is offering a significant settlement, $20 million. That's more than generous, given the prenuptial agreement." Maria's lawyer, Patrick, shot back. $20 million is a pittance compared to the Delgado empire. "My client deserves equitable distribution, especially in light of the new evidence we'll be presenting about hidden assets." Garrett stiffened. "What evidence?" Patrick laid out the file containing Daniela's USB drive findings, shell companies, suspicious transfers, and potential tax evasion. Maria noticed Jacob's face flush with anger. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. "If you don't want the courts delving into these matters," Patrick said calmly, "it would be wise to offer a fair settlement and quickly." Garrett looked to Jacob, who cleared his throat. "This is ridiculous," Jacob muttered. "Maria, we can handle this privately. Let's not blow up everything we built." Maria's anger flared. "We didn't build anything together anymore, Jacob. You destroyed that. I just want what I'm legally entitled to, nothing less." Before Jacob could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, features hardening. "Excuse me," he said, rising and stepping outside. Maria exchanged a look with her lawyer, who gave her a reassuring nod. She felt a pang in her chest, remembering the man she once loved. But she'd come too far to yield. Moments later, Jacob returned, face grim. "There's a situation at Delgado Holdings. I need to attend to it. We'll resume this later." He left with Garrett, leaving an uncomfortable silence behind. Patrick exhaled and turned to Maria. "He's rattled. That's good. But we need to keep the pressure on." She nodded, her mind swirling with possibilities. Jacob had always thrived under pressure, but this was a new realm of stress, public scandal, board dissatisfaction, a vengeful sister revealing his secrets, a cunning mistress, and a betrayed wife fighting back. If anyone understood the Empire's vulnerability, it was Maria, and now she had no reason to protect it. Jacob discovered what the phone call was about. Keiji Nakamura had officially withdrawn his large investment due to the ongoing negative publicity and internal instability at Delgado Holdings. The blow was catastrophic. Stocks dipped, the board was livid, rumors of a hostile takeover circulated. Jacob's once iron grip on his empire was loosening. In the days that followed, tabloids feasted on fresh gossip. Leaked whispers suggested that Jacob's mistress was demanding a rush wedding and that the Delgado board was considering a forced resignation if the crisis continued. Jacob's face, once glowing with ambition, now appeared haggard. The carefully curated facade of success was crumbling faster than he could salvage it. At Annalise's insistence, Jacob tried to offer her a lavish ceremony in some exotic locale, hoping a quick marriage might quell some rumors and secure her unwavering support. But the board frowned at any attempt that would further sensationalize his personal life. An internal power struggle erupted, with some directors pressuring Jacob to step down temporarily. Regina Charles especially had sharpened her stance, aligning with a faction that believed Delgado Holdings needed a new figurehead to reassure investors. In a desperate bid to maintain control, Jacob made a public statement. Cameras flashed as he stepped before a cluster of reporters outside the Delgado Holdings headquarters. He wore a dark suit, face set in an expression of forced calm. "I would like to address recent speculations regarding my personal life," he began, voice subdued. "I am currently going through a divorce process, and I request privacy and respect during this challenging time. Delgado Holdings remains strong, and we are fully committed to our ongoing projects. The unfortunate withdrawal of Mr. Nakamura's investment does not diminish our stability." He continued with corporate platitudes, but the reporters clamored for more personal answers. "What about the mistress? Are you engaged already?" one asked. Jacob ignored it, reading from his carefully prepared statement. But the damage was done. In the public's eye, he was the faithless millionaire with something to hide. Watching the coverage from Jennifer's townhouse, Maria felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and sorrow. She had loved that man once. Now he was a stranger, fighting to keep illusions intact. But illusions always come at a price. She reminded herself of that truth. As the divorce hearing approached, tension reached a fever pitch. Patrick Hodges received a call from Garrett Rhodes, requesting a private meeting, just the lawyers and their clients, with no media or court officials. Maria and Jennifer drove to the law firm's office, hearts pounding. They were ushered into a sleek conference room. Jacob, Garrett, Patrick, and a stone-faced Annalise were already seated around a polished table. Maria ignored the pang of seeing Annalise by Jacob's side. She focused on the fact that the mistress's presence was highly unusual in a divorce negotiation. Garrett cleared his throat. "We've come with a proposition, Mr. Delgado is prepared to offer a settlement of $100 million plus the Manhattan penthouse in exchange for Miss Delgado signing a non-disclosure agreement, no further revelations about Delgado Holdings or Mr. Delgado's personal affairs. We want to handle this quietly and move on. Maria's eyes flickered. 100 million was vastly larger than the initial offer. She glanced at Patrick, who gave a subtle nod, indicating it was a substantial proposition. Yet something felt off. Her gaze slid to Annalise, who looked uncharacteristically tense. Patrick spoke up. "It's a generous offer, but we need to verify if there are no further conditions. Also, the NDA's scope must be clarified. Miss Delgado has the right to discuss her personal experiences freely." Jacob cut in, voice sharp. "I don't want my ex-wife airing dirty laundry. We sign this. We end it. Maria, you go your way, I go mine." Maria's heart raced. 100 million could secure her future, free her from the stress, and let her start anew. It was a fortune beyond her wildest imagination back when they were newlyweds sharing cheap takeout. But then her gaze settled on Annalise, who avoided eye contact. Maria recalled the shady deals and the knowledge that Delgado Holdings was unraveling behind the scenes. She realized that if she accepted the offer blindly, she might be stepping into a trap, allowing Jacob to cover up potential crimes and injustice. She licked her lips, choosing her words carefully. "Jacob, I appreciate the offer, but I won't sign anything until I'm sure you're not hiding more. I don't need your hush money if it means letting you and Annalise ruin more lives." Anger flashed in Jacob's eyes. "You're letting bitterness cloud your judgment. Think of what 100 million can do for you." Annalise finally spoke, voice hesitant. "Maria, please. There's no need to drag this out. We can all walk away with dignity." Maria almost laughed at the irony of Annalise talking about dignity. Instead, she closed her eyes, remembering the heartbreak of that night at Belafonte's. Then she thought of the fear and manipulation that might still lurk if she let Jacob walk away scot-free. "I'll consider it," she said, "but I'm not making a decision today." Garrett, Jacob's lawyer, looked frustrated. "We need an answer soon. Otherwise, we proceed to court." "Then we proceed to court," Patrick replied calmly. "We'll see you there." The tension was palpable as they stood to leave. Jacob locked eyes with Maria. "Don't do this," he said softly, an echo of the old Jacob appearing for a split second. "We can solve this quietly." She met his gaze, seeing the man she once loved drowned out by layers of betrayal. "If you had wanted things quiet, you wouldn't have proposed to your mistress in a public place." The day of the official court hearing dawned cloudy and brisk. Photographers and reporters crowded the courthouse steps. Maria arrived with Patrick, Jennifer, and a small security detail. Whispers followed her. She was no longer just a betrayed wife, she was the woman who might topple a millionaire's empire. Rumors swirled that she possessed damning evidence of fraud. Jacob and Annalise arrived separately, escorted by their own legal team. People craned their necks to catch a glimpse, cameras clicking furiously. He looked tense, shoulders stiff under his tailored suit. Annalise kept her chin high, though she lingered behind Jacob, as if wary of the scrutiny. Inside the large, wood-panelled courtroom, the judge, a stern woman named Honorable Denise Faraday, called the session to order. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation. On the surface, it was a high-profile divorce, but in reality, it was a battleground for corporate secrets, personal vengeance, and heartbreak. Patrick presented Maria's case with meticulous detail, her contributions to Jacob's early success, the suspicious financial maneuvers uncovered by Daniela and Richard Pine, and the emotional distress caused by Jacob's public betrayal. Garrett rebutted by citing the prenup, painting Maria as vengeful, seeking more than she deserved. Midway through the proceedings, Patrick introduced a surprise witness, Daniela Delgado. She stepped forward, looking poised and determined. Her testimony about Jacob's shell companies, backed by email chains and financial documents, sent waves of shock through the courtroom. The tension climbed higher when she revealed that she had confronted Jacob years ago about money laundering allegations, which he had vehemently denied. When cross-examined by Garrett, Daniela stayed firm. "I have no reason to lie," she said quietly, "other than to expose wrongdoing. My brother has threatened me, but I won't be silent anymore." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jacob's face was a mask of barely contained fury. For Maria, hearing Daniela stand up for the truth was both validating and heartbreaking. This was the family she once thought she had. Then it was Annalise's turn on the stand. She was visibly nervous, glancing repeatedly at Jacob for reassurance. Under Patrick's probing questions, she admitted to the affair, to Jacob's promises of marriage, but denied any knowledge of financial misconduct. She played the part of the innocent lover, insisting she merely fell in love with a man who claimed he was divorcing his wife. Patrick pressed, "Did Mr. Delgado ever mention, even indirectly, wanting to shift funds out of the country, presumably to protect them from the plaintiff?" Annalise hesitated, swallowing hard. "Not in so many words," she finally said. He mentioned wanting to make sure his money was secure." That small admission sent a ripple through the courtroom. Jacob's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. By the time Annalise stepped down, sweat dotted her brow. She cast a fleeting glance at Jacob, who looked away. After a tense lunch recess, the court reconvened. Garrett strode to the center, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. "Your Honor, we have newly obtained evidence regarding Miss Delgado's own financial history. Specifically, questionable transactions in her name that raise concerns about her credibility." A hush descended. Maria's heart skipped. She had no idea what they were referring to. She quickly glanced at Patrick, who looked equally puzzled. Jennifer furrowed her brow. Could Jacob's legal team have found something contrived to discredit Maria? Garrett projected documents onto a screen. They showed wire transfers from an account titled M. Delgado to a bank in the Cayman Islands. The amounts were substantial, several $1 million. Maria was dumbfounded. She had never seen those transactions. "This is absurd," Patrick hissed. "Miss Delgado has no knowledge of these accounts. They must be fabricated," but Garrett pressed on. "Nevertheless, these documents indicate that Miss Delgado might have known about offshore practices and even participated in them. We must question her integrity and motivations." Maria's stomach churned. She realized this was a smear tactic, orchestrated to paint her as complicit or hypocritical. But how had they manufactured these records? The judge frowned, calling for order. "Miss Delgado," she addressed Maria, "do you have any knowledge of these transactions?" Maria stood, voice trembling but resolute. "None whatsoever, Your Honor. This is the first I've seen of these so-called documents. I suspect they're part of a scheme by Mr. Delgado to undermine my case." Jacob's eyes flicked toward her. Was there a flicker of regret, or just determination to win at any cost? The judge instructed further examination of the evidence, and recess was called for the day. The media outside went wild, speculating on whether Maria was truly innocent or had skeletons in her closet. That evening, as Maria regrouped with her team, she tried to steady her nerves. Jennifer cursed Jacob's low blow. Patrick immediately launched an investigation into the suspicious documents, suspecting they were forged or manipulated. Meanwhile, Maria's phone buzzed with a text from Richard Pine. "Meet me at my office tomorrow at 7 a.m. I might have found something that can flip this around." Tension thrummed within her. She realized that she was dancing on the edge of a high-stakes game, one where illusions could be crafted and destroyed in an instant. She also sensed that if she didn't play her cards right, she could lose everything. The next morning, Maria arrived at Richard Pine's unremarkable office building in Chelsea. In a modest but tidy workspace, he greeted her with a firm handshake. On his desk, he had a laptop open to a complicated spreadsheet of IP addresses and account details. "I suspected those documents introduced in court were forged," he began without preamble. "So I did a deep dive into the digital metadata of the wire transfers. Every time a wire transfer is done, there's an electronic fingerprint. Long story short, the documents we saw in court have anomalies that suggest they were fabricated." Maria felt a surge of relief but also anger at Jacob's treachery. "So it's definitely fake," Richard nodded. "Yes, and I have proof. The IP addresses associated with these transactions trace back to a shell company that's linked to Delgado Holdings. The digital watermark indicates the documents were created using a specific software license registered to that same shell company. In simpler terms, it was an inside job." Maria exhaled, tension draining from her shoulders. She wanted to hug Richard, but she settled for gripping his arm. "This is exactly what we need. With this, we can prove they tried to frame me." Richard offered a faint smile. "Be careful. Jacob's cornered, and cornered people can be unpredictable. But yes, this should be enough to dismantle their smear campaign." Armed with this new evidence, Maria returned to the courthouse. Patrick introduced Richard Pine's findings, systematically debunking the false documents. The judge was furious at the apparent attempt to mislead the court. Garrett stammered that they'd obtained the documents from an anonymous source and had no knowledge of the forgery. Jacob looked livid, glancing at Annalise, who stared at the floor. The judge sternly reminded all parties that perjury and tampering with evidence carried severe consequences. In a decisive moment, she ordered a full forensic audit of Delgado Holdings' accounts. That spelled disaster for Jacob, who had spent years carefully disguising questionable dealings. It was the final straw that cracked his empire's shell wide open. When the courtroom resumed, Maria's legal team presented ironclad evidence that the so-called Cayman Islands bank statements in her name were forged. Metadata traced them back to a shell company tied to Delgado Holdings, proving Jacob's team had fabricated documents to discredit her. Furious at the deception, the judge ordered a comprehensive forensic audit of all Delgado Holdings accounts. Within days, the company's stock nosedived as investors panicked, and board members blamed Jacob for the ensuing scandal. Facing mounting pressure, they forced him to step down as CEO, leaving him humiliated and struggling to salvage his reputation. Simultaneously, Maria's divorce proceedings reached a turning point. Recognizing he was cornered by the damning audit and under threat of a potential criminal investigation, Jacob instructed his lawyer to extend a vastly improved settlement offer. Instead of the nominal amounts initially proposed, Maria now stood to receive $200 million, a portfolio of properties including the Manhattan penthouse, and an official acknowledgement of Jacob's wrongdoing. Crucially, the settlement would also include his public apology for using forged evidence against her. Desperate to minimize further legal liabilities and public shame, Jacob surrendered to every condition, though he seethed at the outcome. On the day the final documents were signed, Jacob approached Maria in the courthouse hallway, offering a halting apology that acknowledged his betrayal and, beneath that, his regret at how spectacularly he had destroyed their shared dreams. Maria accepted his words without malice, though the bond they'd once shared was irrevocably severed. Annalise Winslow did not appear. Rumors suggested she was already planning her exit, unwilling to remain at Jacob's side now that his empire was in shambles. With the divorce finalized, Maria stepped away from the chaos. Though she walked away with more money than she'd ever imagined, she remained grounded by the values her parents had instilled in her. Resolving to use her resources for good, she founded an organization to assist women rebuilding their lives after betrayal, separation, or financial struggles. Daniela, Jacob's sister, became a staunch supporter. Together, they furnished the charity's new office, forging a friendship born of mutual respect rather than shared loyalty to Jacob. Jacob's fall from grace served as a cautionary tale in Manhattan's elite circles, a parable of unchecked ambition leading to ruin. Free from his shadow, Maria embraced her next chapter on her own terms, moving into a modern penthouse across town, a space she chose herself. Not out of obligation, she felt a renewed sense of hope. Gazing at the skyline one late afternoon, she allowed the crisp air to fill her lungs, contemplating the journey that had challenged her faith in love and trust. Yet, in rising from the rubble, Maria discovered a powerful truth. Broken dreams could serve as the foundation for a more genuine, self-determined future. In the end, she transformed a devastating betrayal into an unbreakable will, resolved to live fully and authentically. Her story an enduring testament to resilience and renewal. And there you have it, the twists and turns of Maria Delgado's remarkable journey from unsuspecting wife to triumphant phoenix. She discovered the power of self-reinvention in the face of heartbreak and high-stakes drama, proving that even the deepest betrayals can ignite a fierce determination to rise. Jacob Delgado's downfall and Annalise Winslow's vanishing act became cautionary tales whispered throughout Manhattan's elite circles, while Maria's name was etched into the city's lore as a resilient survivor who refused to back down. She built a new life that honored her past but never allowed it to define her future. If you've been hooked by this tale of scandal, reinvention, and triumph, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Help us spread the inspiration and let others know that even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance to step into the light stronger than ever. Together, we can celebrate stories of courage, resilience, and personal victory.